tens of thousands of new candidates are entering the law school race for the same number of seats. If you're applying to law school this year, that's both exciting and terrifying. It's exciting because interest in law school is surging, which is proof that the law degree still holds real prestige and value. But it's also terrifying because everybody thinks they're the next Harvey Specter. So today I'm going to break down why applications are spiking again, what that means for your law school odds, and exactly how you can stand out no matter how crowded the field gets. The first big question, of course, is why are we seeing this surge? There are three factors all playing a role creating that perfect storm. We have the economy, politics, and AI. Law school admissions is counter-cyclical. That means demand spikes when the economy is bad. When the economy is good, demand drops. And the economy these days is kind of uncertain. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, unemployment for recent college grads is 5.3%, which is actually higher than unemployment in the general economy. So imagine spending 4 years in undergrad, taking on $200,000 in debt, and then actually having a harder time getting a job as a result. And of course, this is not the first time we've seen this happen. I've been doing this for 20 years. Back in 2008, we had the financial crisis leading to a spike in demand for law school. We saw it again in 2020, and we're seeing it again today. The second big factor is politics. When people are more politically engaged, interest in law school spikes as folks want to change the system from within. We saw this in the 2016 year with the presidential race then. We saw it in 2020, and of course, we're seeing it again now, even into 2025, no longer in a presidential cycle, but politics is crazy. Things are happening. The Supreme Court makes controversial decisions. People want to go to law school to change the system from within. The third big factor is a new one, but it's also pretty significant. It's artificial intelligence. AI is eating jobs in marketing, coding, and finance, so people are looking for careers where human judgment still matters. And law can feel like one of the last bastions of human reasoning. And of course, AI can summarize a case, but it can't look a judge in the eye and make a moral judgment that affects someone else's life. And so people being squeezed by economics, fired by politics, and nervous about AI, all sprinting towards law school. That's why we're seeing this boom today. But the real question is, of course, what does this mean for you? Let's visualize it with some numbers. Last year, imagine there were 100 people in line for every 100 law school seats. This year, there are 133 people in that same line. No new seats, just more people elbowing their way into that game of musical chairs. That 33-person overflow turns into more wait lists, more rejections, and tougher scholarship odds. This is what I call competitive compression. Everything shifts upward. LSAT medians rise, GPA cutoffs tighten, and scholarship pools shrink. So if last year a 165 and a 3.5 got you into a top 30 program, this year you might need a 170 and a 3.8 just to keep pace. And that is the bad news. But the good news is that you're not powerless, because even in a crowded field, if you've got the numbers, you've still got a shot. And by the way, if you're looking for support with your LSAT prep, you want a little help getting that boost, I'm offering free LSAT tutoring lessons to everybody out there watching this. You can book your call with me personally at unpluggedprep.com/start. I want to help out as many folks as I can out there. It's 100% free. So let's talk about how you compete when the odds tighten. You control your timing, you control your test score, and you control the story that you tell. Law school admissions is on a rolling basis, meaning the earlier you apply, the better your odds. And when things are more competitive, timing becomes leverage. If you can be ready for the LSAT by November or January at the earliest, you're relatively early in the review pile. But if you're taking it in February or April, you're a bit behind the curve. It's like buying concert tickets. If you're an early fan, you get the floor seats. If you're a latecomer, you get the nosebleeds. You don't want to be fighting over leftovers. So if you want a front row spot in law school admissions, you want to start now, ideally knocking out the LSAT by November or January at the latest. But don't rush it for November if you won't be ready in time. It's better to apply 2 months later in January with a higher score than earlier in October or November with a lower score. Now, the LSAT is still the ultimate multiplier, and law schools will claim they review applications holistically, but that's not what the data shows, especially when you've got 33% more people applying. they've got no choice but to rely on the numbers. That's why the LSAT is still the great equalizer, especially now. And if your undergrad GPA isn't what you wanted it to be, maybe you were working while you were in school, maybe you had family obligations or an emergency, or you just were not mature enough to take full advantage of the opportunities available to you at the time, the LSAT is the biggest lever you can still control today. And even getting 3 more points on the LSAT could be worth tens of thousands of dollars in financial aid. This is the math of how schools allocate money. And since logic games are off the test, the focus is entirely on logical reasoning and reading comp. Logical reasoning is now 2/3 of your score, meaning you've got to learn how to spot conclusions instantly. You want to be able to predict the answer before you even look at the choices whenever possible, and you want to be able to ID the flaw hiding underneath the argument. You want to understand cause and effect, comparisons, samples, and so on. And so for this reason, when we work with students, we train them to read like the test makers, not a test taker. Once you start seeing the logic through the eyes of the people who make the exam, your score is going to jump fast. Of course, you don't want to neglect reading comprehension either. And you're not reading for details, you're reading for structure. After every single paragraph, you want to pause and summarize it in just one sentence. You want to note contrast words like however, but, and yet, because that's where the authors reveal their true opinion. And you also want to build up your stamina. Most people lose points not from misunderstanding, but from fatigue. So practice in short bursts every single day, like a workout. Don't try to cram it all into just one day of the week. Now, storytelling in your personal statement is like your narrative LSAT score. It reveals your reasoning for why you want to go to law school, how you connect the dots of your background and make meaning out of it. Now, don't say, I've always been passionate about justice. Everybody says that. Super cliche. You want to zoom in on memorable moments. For example, when I translated eviction paperwork for a neighbor, I realized how much power lies in plain language. That day, I decided to study law, not for theory, but for access. You want to be vivid, specific, and honest. The reflective essays, the ones that show growth or humility, will often resonate more than a laundry list of your achievements from your resume. Now that we know why this cycle is different, let's talk about what's going to happen next. The pace of applications will slow. We're not going to be up 33% year over year by the end of the cycle. It'll probably be more like 20, maybe 25% up by the end of the year. But that does mean we're going to see a lot more people being shunted off to the waitlist as schools hedge their bets. Schools are going to engage more in yield protection, meaning they want to reject people who are overqualified, who seem unlikely to attend, and there's going to be less scholarship money available because schools just won't need to offer as much in order to fill their seats. So you want to have a good balance of reach, target, and safety schools, not just T14 prestige names, because a lower ranked school with more scholarship money could change your entire financial trajectory for the rest of your career. And also, like I said, apply early by the end of January if you can. Now, don't get discouraged when you see people posting that they got a full ride on Reddit. You don't want to be refreshing your email 50 times a day and wondering when you don't hear back from schools if silence means rejection. It's normal to have to wait months and months. The people who make it through to the end of the cycle, maintaining their sanity, stay calm and consistent. Just as the LSAT rewards discipline, law school admissions does also. So build a schedule you can sustain with both your LSAT prep and your applications, and get busy. Once you send in your application, work on something else, volunteer, catch up with friends, get back to your other obligations, because you want to maintain your composure. This process will unfold over the course of months, not just weeks. And the numbers do play a role, but the LSAT is not everything, of course. While the LSAT as a whole is incredibly important, no one particular test date will make or break you. You can always retake